What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue and also conclude our 2025 college football schedule preview and very early projected records, but we continue our Power 4 projections for every single Power 4 conference, and we're closing things out with the ACC. I've already done the other 3 Power 4 conferences. If you have not seen those videos, be sure to go back and check them out right here on the channel. I did the SEC on Monday. Tuesday I did the Big 10, and then yesterday I did the Big 12. Now we're closing things out with the ACC. I want to make this clear, this is not an official prediction. These are simply projections based off of how each and every team's schedule, how tough it was, and then sometime a little bit easier of a schedule for them in 2025. And again, we just gave you a projected record based on how tough that schedule was. And again, this is not a prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough each and every team's schedule was. So let's go ahead and jump right into it here with our 2025 ACC football projections for this upcoming 2025 season. We'll start from the top and work our way down to the bottom. So at the top here, we got the first 5 teams. We got Clemson at the top. They're projected to go 10-2. So as of right now, I think Clemson probably is the favorite to win the ACC. They have a schedule that they're going to be favored in almost every single one of their games. And you just look at this Clemson team. A lot of production, a lot of experience coming back for them on both sides of the football. This is the most returning production I think Dabo Swinney has had in his time at Clemson. Yeah, he's had some talent, but this is definitely a lot of experience coming back. And yeah, Clemson might be one of those contenders that can make it to the college football playoff again. Can they win a national championship? It's kind of hard to tell as of right now, but you look at their schedule, they got a couple of SEC teams in the non-conference, so likely one of their 2 losses could probably come in the SEC, and then they probably can lose an ACC game somewhere. But let's say this happens. Let's say if Clemson probably, wins every ACC game, and then they probably lose those 2 non-conference games, again, against the SEC, against South Carolina at the end of the year, and then you got LSU at the beginning of the season. So, but if they win one of those 2 games, they're definitely going to go 11-1 instead of like 10-2. But likely they could probably slip up somewhere in the ACC. We just don't know who it's going to be. It could be probably against, Louisville, because they lost to them, of course, at home last year. And then they could probably lose to some other team as well. But yeah, Clemson, I think they are definitely the favorite as of right now here in the ACC. Again, they are projected to go 10-2 based on their schedule. Louisville, Miami, and SMU, these are all teams that are projected to go 9-3. So these 3 teams, I think they probably can challenge Clemson for that top spot in the conference. But you look at Louisville, I don't know if they'll be as good as they were in the last couple of years. Louisville actually had a bit of a step back from where they were in 2023. I mean, they won, or actually they didn't win the conference, but they were second place and they went to the ACC championship. But yeah, Louisville, they were not really as good as we kind of expected from last year, but their schedule does give them a chance to go 9-3. I wouldn't be surprised if they went 8-4 again though, but they added some transfers on their roster. Miller Moss, we'll see how good he's going to be at quarterback. But yeah, Louisville is projected to go 9-3. Miami, on the other hand, they may not be as good as they were from last year, but they'll still have some talent. Mario Cristobal really recruits in the transfer portal, and they brought in a really good recruiting class again. So yeah, Miami, we'll see how good they are. We'll see if they'll be as good as they were last year, or maybe not as good as they were last year. But, Miami definitely sitting there as a top contender in the ACC. And we'll see how good Carson Beck is at quarterback. So this Miami team, based on their schedule, they are projected to go 9-3. They kind of have a tough non-conference schedule. They got to play Notre Dame in the non-conference, and they also got to play Florida. So a couple of teams there that can probably lose, and then they could probably slip up somewhere in the ACC. So yeah, Miami projected to go 9-3. SMU, another team just like Miami, they may not be as good as they were last year, but they do return Kevin Jennings at quarterback. They're really going to lose a lot of players from last year's team on that roster that made the college football playoff. But still, I think SMU will still be a top contender in the ACC in order to make it to the ACC championship. Wouldn't be surprised if they made it to the ACC title again, but I also wouldn't be surprised if SMU took a bit of a step back from where they were last year. year. Again, Miami and SMU are two teams that might have a little bit of a step back, but not a big step back from where they were last year. Miami didn't make the playoff, but SMU made it, so those two teams probably could have step backs, and they might not make it to the ACC championship. It could be one of those teams that probably emerges out of that dark horse category. But yeah, SMU, Miami, and Louisville, these three teams are pretty much, top contenders to challenge Clemson in the ACC. I don't think Clemson is going to dominate this conference, but they're definitely projected to be the favorite in the ACC, in my opinion, as of right now. And then Louisville, Miami, and SMU, those are your other top contenders in this conference. You got Duke here at the bottom. I don't think Duke is a top contender in the ACC, but they could become like a dark horse contender. Their schedule does set up pretty well for them in order to have like a decent season. But yeah, Duke is projected to go 8-4. Wouldn't be surprised though if Duke probably goes 7-5, but if they go like 5-7 or worse than that, yeah, that's definitely a disappointing season because Duke is coming off a great year last year under first-year head coach Manny Diaz. Again, Duke doesn't have a lot of talent, but they definitely have the roster that is well coached. So yeah, Duke there projected to go 8-4. I like the way the schedule sets up for them. So those are the first set of 5 teams here in the ACC. Let's now go to the next few teams here in the conference. We got 3 teams projected to go 7-5. You got California, North Carolina, and Virginia Tech. These 3 teams projected to go 7-5. I think these teams are probably your dark horse contenders, including Duke. I don't think Cal is going to be a dark horse, though. It's kind of hard to tell how good Cal is going to be every year, but they are a well-coached team. They're a consistent team as a program, and they usually make it to a bowl game every year, but I don't know if they can challenge the top contenders in the ACC at all, but I think North Carolina can. North Carolina, obviously, with Bill Belichick taking over as the head coach, their schedule kind of sets up pretty well for them, but it's a projection just based off of the schedule and based off of where they were last year. And North Carolina is projected to go 7-5. Again, I don't want to really go too far with North Carolina yet. I think this team will be good, but the question is, how good are they going to be? That's obviously the question mark there for North Carolina. But yeah, the talent on this roster that they brought in from the transfer portal, I think this North Carolina team does have a bright future, but it is just Bill Belichick's first year. And I'm not treating him like he's a bad coach, but again, it's his first year at the college level. And sometimes, the NFL coaches, they come from that level. It is kind of different compared to the NFL, so we'll see how good Bill Belichick does here for North Carolina, but they are projected to go 7-5 based on their schedule. Virginia Tech, they are projected to go 7-5, so like I said, Cal, North Carolina, and Virginia Tech, and also Duke. I think those are probably your dark horse teams. Again, I don't really feel confident with California, though, being a dark horse team. Virginia Tech, North Carolina, and Duke, I kind of feel confident with these 3 teams, but not so much about Cal. I think Cal definitely has like a schedule though that sets up pretty well for them to kind of just finish at that 7-5 mark, and then also definitely make it to a bowl game. So yeah, Cal, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, they're all projected to go 7-5. They will be decent teams, but like I said, I don't feel confident with Cal being a dark horse in the ACC, but I do feel confident with North Carolina, Virginia Tech, and then also Duke. Georgia Tech and NC State both projected to make it to bowl games at 6-6. I think they'll definitely make it to bowl games this year, but one of these teams in the ACC, we also have more teams that are projected to go 6-6. One of these teams is not even probably going to go to a bowl game, or maybe it could be a couple of them, because not all 17 teams in the ACC can make it to bowl games. But yeah, Georgia Tech and NC State, these 2 teams have kind of like very tough schedules. That's why you're seeing them only projected to go 6-6 for 2025. And then also we got more teams that are projected to go 6-6. You got 3 more teams here, so that makes it 5 total. Yeah, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, and Wake Forest, these 3 teams projected to go 6-6. You look at Syracuse, they may not be as good as they were last year because the schedule definitely is much more tougher compared to last season, in my opinion. They got to play Tennessee and Atlanta to kick off the year, so it's really going to be about that game, and it's really about their conference schedule as well. So these 5 teams, they are all projected to go 6-6, which definitely they can probably win 2 or 3 ACC games. I think if all these teams win like 3 games at least, then that will definitely be enough to make it to a bowl game. But one of these teams probably like wins a couple of games, and that probably won't be enough to make it to a bowl game at all. But yeah, Pittsburgh, they're projected to go 6-6. I do expect Pittsburgh to be right there around 6, 7, 8 wins, because this is usually one of the more consistent programs in the ACC. And then Wake Forest projection does surprise me a lot. Wake Forest doesn't have like a really tough schedule this year. I don't really think they have to play some of the top teams in the ACC from last year, but they definitely have some tough games on there that they'll definitely be underdogs in. But Wake Forest actually can make it to a bowl game, so Wake Forest might be a surprise team in 2025. They don't have the talented roster like they used to, but this is a well-coached team, and they're definitely right there around 6, 7, 8 wins, somewhere in that particular win range. But again, they were they had a pretty rough year last year, so we'll see if they can turn things around in 2025. Again, Pittsburgh, they got off to that really good start last year, but do we expect Pittsburgh to be a contender in the ACC? Probably not, but they can probably still be a dark horse team. Pittsburgh probably could be a dark horse team, but not probably Syracuse, and probably not for them. Again, I think it's going to be a pretty big step back for Syracuse because they lost so much talent from last year. And plus, the schedule, again, is tougher compared to last season. They had one of the easier schedules in 2024, but this year it's kind of more tougher. Boston College and Florida State both projected to go 5-7. Boston College, one of their losses could come against Michigan State in the non-conference. They got to play the Spartans there out of the Big Ten in the non-conference. They played that one on the road, of course. So yeah, that might be a tough game. And then odds would say they probably go 2-6 in conference play. So likely that 7th loss could probably come in the non-conference, and then the 6 losses come in the ACC. That goes for Florida State as well. Florida State, can they turn things around in 2025 after being the worst team in the ACC last year and definitely the worst team in the country? I think they can, but Florida State, definitely a lot of question marks for them. They also have a pretty tough schedule, but they do bring in some transfers to help them out. Maybe I shouldn't say there's not any question marks for the Seminoles. They're definitely going to be talented enough, but again, the schedule kind of does concern me for Florida State. They have Alabama and Florida both out of the SEC, so one of those games probably they can lose to. They can probably lose to both of them, but then they probably go 2-6 in conference play, or maybe 3-5, depending if they beat one of those non-conference opponents. If they beat either Alabama or Florida, they can probably go 6-6. That's probably their best case scenario, and that's definitely the best case scenario for Boston College. If Boston College beats Michigan State, then they probably go 6-6, and that goes for Florida State. If they either beat Alabama or also Florida, if they win both of them, that's definitely going to be a surprise. They go 7-5 with that kind of record, but if they win at least one of them, then they'll go probably 6-6. But if they lose both of them, then that's going to put them at 5-7 for the rest of the year. So yeah, Boston College and Florida State both projected to miss out on a bowl game by 1 game on that record. Let's go to the bottom teams now. We got Virginia and Stanford. Virginia, they're projected to go 5-7. They don't really have a tough schedule, so maybe the schedule definitely kind of gives them that chance to make it to a bowl game this year. So yeah, the Cavaliers might be a surprise team, but again, this team just doesn't have that talent like they used to, and they lost so much production from last year. So yeah, we'll see if Virginia can kind of have that, pretty even 5-7, or they can come out of nowhere and make it to a bowl game. And then obviously Stanford, I don't really know how good Stanford is going to be. They just lost their head coach. They don't really have that talented roster like they used to, and they're not a really big powerhouse program as they used to be as well. So yeah, Stanford, I think they are projected to be the worst team in the ACC in my opinion, and that's why you're seeing the projection at 4-8. And again, their schedule is very tough. I mean, obviously, they got to play Notre Dame every year. That's always really tough to do, and they just have a pretty tough conference schedule once again for 2025. So, yeah, Stanford, I don't really think they're going to be really, really bad. I think they'll be, somewhat okay, but, again, it's not really a team that's going to make a big jump, in my opinion. Again, after losing their head coach, they definitely don't really have a favorable schedule, and that's why they're projected to go 4-8, just because of that schedule. So, yeah, Virginia and Stanford here at the way bottom. We'll see see who becomes the worst team in the ACC at the end of the day. But those are my official ACC football projections for 2025. Do you guys agree with or disagree with these projections? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And also give me your projections for this conference as well. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.